Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me all right. And sorry for the little delay in the beginning due to coffee errors. Uh, so welcome everyone to this bird of feather for networks of data ambassadors or stewards with the aim of sharing experience on this topic. For those who might attend their first bird of a feather, it's a session not related directly to an interest or working group, with the idea of being more exploratory than a group or joint session. So let's get started. Siguiente, por favor. Up. Take that. So we'll have a few questions for the audience. Then we'll present the various speakers and networks. And then we'll have the discussion, notably what are the next steps after this bird of feather. Okay. Oh, ¿está encendida? Ah, sí. Creo que no está encendida. Bueno. Okay, so a few questions. So we'll do hands up, and for people in the chat, you can just type in the chat the number of the question if yes. So one, who is a member of an RDM or data ambassador network? So okay, 5 people in the room. And then we'd like to know what scale of network are you part of? So is it a national, institutional, regional, or other? Feel free to add comments in the chat now, or we'll just speak of them in the discussion later for the room. So for people that are not a member of an existing network, but planning to make one or in the process of building one, if there are some people, not in the room, so maybe in the chat, we'll see later. And finally, if there's an interest of guidelines for building or maintaining networks. Okay, so 6 people in the room. Siguiente, por favor. So to present a very short context and objectives about this session. So the context is obviously the data stewards networks, which are growing at the various scales we mentioned, and with the advantages usually pointed out that it bridges the various communities, whether it's domains or local in the case of regional networks, and help distribute the load of research support, where, for example, in an institution, there might be not many personnel dedicated to RDM that can then benefit to other institutions. So I already mentioned the various domains and the fact that it brings diversity. And there are a few challenges outside of building the networks themselves, which is already something we'll see in the presentations. Some of it is that even if there are various levels or scales of network, we usually face similar issues with always different facets, but in a similar way. And given that networks don't always know that there are other networks or don't have a point of contact, and so there's not a global framework for networks. And that's why we wanted to kick off this discussion to have more links between them and hopefully move towards more network of networks. So we'll discuss the importance of this network, the experiences about existing networks, and in the discussion, discuss about linking networks together and support and network creation and maintenance. No. So in the presentations, we'll have various scales of network, as mentioned. First, the national ones with IFA Coffee, which will present Sonnery, the Irish Data Stewardship Network. then Lee Wilson for Data Research Alliance of Canada and its Research Data Management Expert Network. I'll then present the French Recherche Data Groove ecosystem and its data management clusters network. We'll then have two institutional level network, one from the French National Institute of Agronomy and Food and Environment INRAE, presented by Amélie Fioca, and one from the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. Then we'll broaden a bit the scale and have a presentation on Skills for EOS project, so at the European level, and a word also on the task groups 7 of the professionalizing data stewardship interest group, which is also very related as its topic, its networks. Siguiente. So now I'll leave the floor to Aoife Kofi, which is remote, but I don't think you need to be co-chair to present Sonnery.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Okay, thumbs up, that's great.
Yes.
Okay, so Sonnery. Sonnery started in 2022. It's funded nationally through the National Open Research Forum as one of the priority actions in a national action plan that was drawn up through a broad consultation process that the National Open Research Forum did over a couple of years. Our main aims for Sonnery are, so it's still a relatively new network, and one of our main aims is to develop data stewardship skills across the research landscape, to raise the profile of existing data stewards, to provide peer support for those in data stewardship roles, because currently there are few nationally in Ireland, to gain greater recognition for the need for data stewardship across the research landscape, and to work towards professionalization, career pathways and skills development for data stewards. And I suppose broad support for kind of the emerging community of related roles around data stewardship. We've been quite active in 23 and 24 as a network trying to get established in the national landscape. We have run a series of roadshows around different institutions and venues in Ireland. I suppose just to kind of let people know that we exist, to search out those data stewards and search out those people who maybe are in data stewardship roles but don't necessarily name it as such. We've also done some qualitative research, conducting a series of interviews across the research landscape to feed back into what Sonnery ultimately becomes. I suppose we felt that, like, despite having a maybe anecdotal knowledge of what we should do, what Sonnery should become, we really wanted to be evidence-based. So we conducted a series of interviews with funders, with researchers at all career stages, with infrastructure providers nationally, and also with data stewards. And that has led us to kind of these four sort of pillars where people have really identified they would like Sonnery support in, and that's recognition within their own institutions and even nationally of the importance of data stewardship for research and for engaging with fair and open data. Greater support for data stewards in you know, kind of in the form of peer recognition or a peer support network. Professionalization is becoming more and more important. If you want more data stewards to join and to decide to have a career in data stewardship, it needs to be a recognized and professional role, and training is really key to that. So we had a great conference there in June. It was a 2-day event, and it was a really kind of joyous, positive 2 days in my own university of UCC, and I think that really gave us a mandate to kind of push forward with this for the research community and for data stewards. We've a growing following on LinkedIn and a growing mailing list as well, which is great to see. More people are kind of saying they want to be part of our group or our gang. But I suppose the problem that we have is because we were funded as a research project, our funding runs out in December. and that puts us in a very precarious position. So we're thinking quickly about how we can sustain activity around this. And I think this is a common problem with these kind of peer support networks, is getting that kind of consistent funding in to allow sustainability of the network. So what we're working on is a micro-credential in data stewardship, and that's going to be a big body of work that we're going to work on over 2025 to provide a introductory and accredited training in data stewardship nationally. And we're hoping to launch that next autumn. So we're really looking forward to that. There's a link to our website there where you can find out more about us and our progress and things that we've been working on. But I suppose we are maybe one of the newer kids on the block in terms of data stewardship networks, but we have big plans and big ambitions. So that's just a quick roundup about SANRI. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, or you can reach out to me by email as well. My contact details are on our website.
Thank you very much, Aoife. We'll now move to Lee with the Research Data Alliance of Canada.
Thank you. Oh, there we go. Excellent. Hi, everybody. Lee Wilson, Director for Research Data Management at the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. I think I'll start us off with a little bit of context setting just for the Canadian context. So the Alliance is a national nonprofit organization funded by the Canadian federal government with the role of supporting digital research infrastructure in Canada. So what that means is that we provide services related to advanced research computing, research data management, research software, and cybersecurity. So we have a fairly large mandate and a number of roles that we play. So we're a funder. We're also a national service provider. And we're a convener, a coordinator, a facilitator for the many and often disconnected or disparate communities that are involved in DRI. So in my day-to-day, I'm situated within the operations department, and then I'm typically wearing more of a service provider hat. But today I'll be speaking to you more with that community convener facilitation side of my work as I talk about the RDM network of experts in Canada. All right, so the network of experts, which is kind of colloquially known as the NOE, is a grassroots bottom-up network of data and information management professionals, and it's coordinated by the Alliance. So it has membership from over 70 higher education and research institutes across the country, and currently engages over 150 members. Membership is voluntary, and it's often considered as a part of professional service component of academic library roles. Although we do have members from a variety of different fields and sectors, of course, including researchers, research administration, ethics, and things of that nature. So the aim of the NOE really is to work collectively as a community to share knowledge, to develop resources, develop best practices, develop training materials, conduct training, as well as support our suite of national data services. So it's composed of 9 standing expert groups, and these are organized loosely around the research data lifecycle, as you can see here on the slide. And it touches on things like data management planning, curation, metadata and discovery, data repositories, preservation, sensitive data, training, as well as meta research about the state of RDM, and particularly the state of RDM in the Canadian ecosystem. In addition to the expert groups, we also have a much larger number of time-limited, often project-focused working groups. And these groups may correspond to one or more of the expert groups. So you might have a working group that's sort of situated within, touching on curation as well as metadata and discovery and data management planning. The groups are chaired by community volunteers, and these groups and the chairs are supported by staff members at the RDM team at the Alliance. And so we do have a national RDM team We facilitate the meetings. We help to coordinate the activities of the network. We work with the community chairs to engage in strategic planning around the group's activities, and also trying to provide that sort of overarching coordination and strategic layer, sort of working across the different groups. In terms of I guess, a loose governance, the NOE is guided by its council of chairs. So that's comprising all of the expert group chairs and co-chairs. More generally, across the Alliance, what we're trying to do now is develop sort of larger superstructures to support DRI, community facilitation and governance. So not getting into complexity too much today, but the Alliance was founded in 2019, and stepping into a new mandate to bring all of these activities together, but very much in the spirit of working with existing communities. So there are many existing communities within RDM, within research software, within advanced research computing. And so as we kind of develop and mature these sort of larger superstructures, the Council of Chairs would be the representative body for certainly the network of experts and sort of the RDM community as a whole. So just before I move on, I think I'll also speak to just some of the benefits and challenges that we're encountering. So I would say that Canada has benefited greatly from this coordinated approach. It's allowed us to develop and advocate for a really impressive suite of national RDM services that are available to all researchers in Canada today, that include things like a data management planning tool, data repositories, a data discovery service, 2 national PID consortia, one focused on DOIs through DataCite, the other focused on ORCID IDs. And many of these services can trace their roots pretty directly back to initial work that was started within the context of the network of experts. So the Alliance, as I mentioned, was created in 2019. This allowed sustainability, and it also allowed for national service delivery and coordination to sort of coalesce under the banner of an overarching organization. Of course, we work very closely with many partner institutions and organizations to deliver services, but still we have that now sort of overarching coordinating body. And even within this new construct, and where you're starting to see services that maybe began in sort of a grassroots community context professionalize, the NOE remains an invaluable partner and still has a very strong role with service delivery. And I would say that it supports the national services in very direct and often tangible ways. So just as a quick example, our expert group related to data management planning just recently led the development of a new DMP template that's specific to supporting researchers in the granting stage of their research lifecycle. And now that DMP template, which was developed by our community, is the default template within our DMP service. So you can really see that that symbiotic sort of a relationship between the national services and the community. In terms of challenges, and I suspect that our experience is going to mirror many in the room today who work in the context of networks. And I'd say in RDA in general, given where we are. So I think one of the challenges is keeping up engagement and momentum. So the NOE began way back in 2015, and it launched in a landscape that's very different than the one we find ourselves in today. So keeping up engagement over a long period of time has been challenging and has required a concerted effort, both from the community as well as the national RDM team that supports it. And related to that, continuing to recruit new members, as well as protect against chair and member burnout. So, we're drawing from a relatively small pool of professionals within the country. And, as is often the case, I think with these community-driven networks, a lot of the work is taken on by a very highly engaged few people. And that ultimately represents a risk to these endeavors. And finally, just a point around navigating competing interests and just ensuring that there's a balance between national coordination or coordination in general and then individual group autonomy. So we do try to strike a balance, and essentially what we're seeing is a lot of innovation coming from the context of the expert groups, sort of groundswell of ideas, things that are really relevant to our members, very relevant to the institutional context, and then that helps us to then inform our coordination and strategic development at the national level. And the two components tend to shape each other in the end. So what you get is sort of this bottom up meets top down in the middle sort of approach where you really do get the best of both worlds. It doesn't always play out quite as smoothly as I just described, but in general, that's the balance that we're aiming to achieve. And I'd say it remains a major strength in this network approach. So that's it for me. Thanks so much for listening, and look forward to continuing the discussion.
Thank you. I'll now present shortly the Research Data GUM ecosystem, as it's a bit similar as a national initiative than the Digital Alliance of Canada. So it's also a national scope and mandated ecosystem because it has different modules, including the network I'll present a bit more in detail, but with a more central governance for its various modules than the federated approach of the Digital Alliance. And as I mentioned, various type of participation corresponding to the various modules that I will describe shortly. And it's also funded by the French state, mainly currently by our National Open Science Support Plan. There is a business model being worked out, but not a definitive one yet. So first one, the platform, which encompasses mostly the services, so the repository, catalog, a bit similarly, so I'll go very shortly about that, and the resource center, which is really tied to it, which is the central support on RDM team. The only thing I'll say additionally of that, in addition to be the central services, is that there's also inside a network of the data administrators and curators of the spaces in the repository, which form a side network, let's say, but which is not as important as the other one and with more integrated into the service, but just to mention the whole ecosystem. Then we have the domain aspect covered by thematic reference centers. They work more as individual cells for the various domains and rely on existing what we call research infrastructures in France, which does not exactly match the English definition, but structures already addressing and managing domain data for the various domains. So next one, please. Then we have the interesting part for today, the data management cluster. So each of these modules, even though they don't form as part of a network as the use cases we saw today, work together to cover various aspects, but this one is really the main network aspect, forming of various local groups that themselves include various universities or schools or research institutes in this area, which can be several sizes. The map is a bit small, but for example, we have various things around Paris that are really small campuses, but we also have things covering regions in places where universities already grouped up or there are less research performing organizations in the area. We currently have 20 data management clusters, 20 being actually 16, with 16 certified. And that's where we can see the difference of governance with a bit more centralized control, as they need to be certified by a central committee. But the one that made already created but are not yet labeled or certified are still recognized, invited to the networks event so that can have a nice onboarding and move toward forming a global service, which, as I mentioned, everything seems like nicely in a bubble. Well, I don't think it's very nice, but in a closed container, which is actually obviously not the case. And thematic center obviously interact with other networks like Elixir, etc. And these ones cover all the aspects and are really the point where the researchers can go that can then link them to other modules. So they form the more important and direct link of the chain. It's becoming already quite large with more than 95 full-time equivalent people, which is in fact, obviously, as it's a mission and not a job for most of these people, 370 people coming from more than 80 organizations, as each cluster might have already several organizations. And the last thing to mention about the governance is that it's focused on universities rather than the other types of institutions, which is also something that could be discussed and which can lead to the various other type of modules, with the last one being precisely a bit similar but still different, the institutional reference center, which might look the same, but actually are already existing before the creation of Research Data Gov in 2021 for the beginning of the project publicly, which already had networks or dedicated team already advanced in RDM and its support for organization. As you see, the list is very limited, so that's why it's not really an equivalent and not really giving justice to all institutions that had such a network. But I let Amélie present the INRISE one, which is actually a network and not a single team, which will show a bit more about this module so that you can see more detail. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, I will present the Data Ambassador Network at INRAE, sorry. It's called Réseau des référents données. There is not really an equivalent for référent, but that's the name for us. So the context is national and institutional. These networks was created in 2021 with the creation of Directorate of Open Science in the Institute. And there is two principal document, National Plan for Open Science, it's national law or rules, and INRAE Data Plan for Science. So if you want to see, you can use the link. The requirements are, yes, disseminating the best practice and supporting research teams and compliance with data sharing legislation. Currently, we have one big network with two levels. One level for data stewards. The data stewards represents research department. And we have 265 data ambassadors in the laboratories or research units. The special feature are there is a big diversity with the profile, with the job. It's really a mission and not a job. So I suppose the discussion about the data stewardship professionalizing, it's important because we need the real competence for this mission. And there is a strong link with the regional Research Data Gov ecosystem data management cluster. Just in tiny, we have an example of guideline from Working Group 4. It's the guideline for to help to create a network yes, it's the French context, but maybe we can yes use this document and inspire and take the inspiration about that. So Yes, thank you. Our referent, our ambassador, have different mission and activity. It depends their percent of mission. It's not the same for each agent. So it's develop and implement a common culture of best practice in data management in the laboratory, in the research unit, and provide the scientists with concrete solutions to support them support their research project and contribute to the life and animation to the network. It's a big network, and we really need the participation of each agent in this network to, yes. So for this, we have different tools to and service for the network operation and yes, and the communication. We have an instant messaging service with Mattermost. We have the space storage with Nextcloud, mailing list, and the principal not a tool, not a service, but action. It's an annual meeting because people need to meet to share their experience and yeah. So it's really important meeting, and we have also dedicated training with Oscar. It's a new platform with the different training about the open science and open data, open publication. There is many subject and theme for this formation. We have policy and law, GDPR, reproducibility, sorry, and reusability, communication, because it's important to this agent to be comfortable with the researcher. It's not really easy to share the good practice with researchers. So we have the module with communication and FAIR principle, DMP, metadata, semantics, yeah, etc. So yeah, it's okay for me. Mm.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have a recording of Gérard Bagnou, who sadly couldn't be with us, but still made a video to present the University of Lausanne's data stewardship network.
Hello everyone, my name is Gérard Bagnou and I work at the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. I'm really happy to be kind of with you today, and I'm going to introduce you the data stewardship network that we've put in place at the university. I'll be focusing my presentation on the roles, tasks, challenges and opportunities we encountered on our project. So this pilot project is running since 2022 and will be ending end of this year. We are going to have an extension for 2025. We obtained this extraordinary fund from the University Rectorate to strengthen the research data management and the open research data practices. For our project, we recruited two different types of profile. One is the data steward expertise, and I'm going to focus on this part of my presentation today. Another more IT-oriented expertise we call research engineers, who are supported staff with a more technical profile. These people are embedded in the university's various faculties They are coordinated centrally to create a network of data steward and research engineers. These two profiles are supported by central expertise such as data protection officer, legal offices, technology and transfer office, the IP office, research services. The two profiles work in a complementary way with their own specific features. Data steward manages compliance and documentation issues, as well as best practices. He also acts as a link between the various areas of expertise available within the university. Research engineers tend to focus on infrastructure, an aspect of data science and IT, such as database management. We currently have 6 data stewards at the University of Lausanne operating within each faculty, as I mentioned before. It is planned that the pilot project will be extended for 2025, and the data steward position will be strengthened to 60% per faculties, compared with around 30% at present time. I've highlighted here on that slide the different tasks of data stewards in relation to the different stages of the life cycle. For reason of time, I will not go into details here. The figures on the left shows data stewards on their fields of intervention in relation to other data specialists as data librarians, data curator, data scientist, or data archivist. This work was carried out as part of the Swiss Data Stewardship Environment project, and I'm going to give you the link at the end of the presentation, which aims to create a certificate of advanced studies in data stewardship. As part of this project, we also identified the professional, methodological, personal, and social skills that a data steward needs to be able to carry out his work successfully. And you see on the right side of the slide the schema that we put in place within our project, and we put all the task and the roles of the data steward during the life cycle of a project. The result of this work can be found on our website, the Swiss Data Stewardship Environment project. Regarding the challenges we face, let me say that first of all, I'd like to mention the financial sustainability of the position, which are currently fixed term for 3 years and for 1 extra years, and also the coordination issues of our network. And also maybe the acceptability of these new emerging position by researchers and by our faculty management. That was not an easy task. Of course, the difficulty of recruiting the right people for this position is another challenge, and also the professionalization of this position. To define the role, identify skills required, provide training. That was a huge issue for us. Another aspect is the recognition of the new data steward profile by peers and researchers. As I mentioned, we have developed a certificate schema to reinforce this recognition. The final challenge I like to address is that of contrasting of long-term vision with a short-term one developed as part of a pilot project. We cannot predict the future for sure, but we only can try to make it possible by preparing for it. And with a short-term vision could be challenging. I'll end my short presentation with a few takeaways from our experiences. The first point would be the need to work on the proper integration of data stewards into a research ecosystem. To facilitate integration and acceptability, most data stewards are former researchers. That helps a lot. The need to develop appropriate training courses to professionalize these emerging profiles, as well as institutionalize recognition of data stewards in the management of research projects within the faculty is very, very important for us too. The need for sustainability, long-term financing of this position, as I mentioned, is also a key aspect, and we are really challenging now by this. We are challenged by this issue now with the budget cost. Finally, I'd like to mention creating a possible career path for this position is crucial. We are seeing this position as a professional reorientation for researchers who don't find job in a classical academic careers. And this is a good argument when we go to our rectorate to beg for money for the sustainability of this position, because this position can offer real professional reorientation and the future for a lot of researchers. So I thank you for your attention, and please don't hesitate to contact us at researchdata.unil.ch if you have any question. And you will find also in our website the research data management and RDA approaches, and also the data stewardship web pages, where you find all the appropriate information about our data stewardship network. Thanks a lot, and I wish you a very, very good continuation of discussion. Thanks.
Here we go. And I'll give the floor to Curtis Sharma to present the project Skills for EOSC, which is already a good step in the direction of sharing networks.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you all for inviting me. Well, I kind of invited myself in a way, but thank you for accepting. And thanks to everyone for sharing their different experiences so far. It's really good to see how we approach this complex issue in different ways, and we can learn from each other. Yeah, so the Skills for EOSC project is a Horizon Europe funded project that's running from 2022 to 2025. And they're looking to sort of, or we are looking to address certain gaps that were observed with respect to open science skills and knowledge, and as we see here. Particularly in work package 6, which is the one that I'm leading, is looking at professional networks for lifelong learning. So this involved a mapping exercise, looking where different networks exist and where they don't exist. For instance, data steward networks, open science communities, thematic networks, and others, including, for instance, a museum curator network. So it's quite varied networks. We also developed a couple of tools, generic network starter kit and the data steward network starter kit, to also help support with the development of new networks. One of the tasks that is particularly related to this topic is the one where we're looking at creating and supporting new data steward networks across different countries, and then linking them with competence centers that are being developed in together with Skills for EOSC. So the Skills for EOSC Competence Center is an idea where we hope that in a local context we are able to encourage the use of the outcomes and the resources produced during the Skills for EOSC project. So aside from creating these networks, linking them with the competence centers, another one is to harmonize these networks within the RDA PDSIG, and this is where we find ourselves today in this room. Go ahead, Nick. So I can, yeah. So within the Skills for EOSC Skills for EOSC network, so far we have been successful in supporting the creation of a data stewards network in Italy, which is at the moment close to 120. Now a lot of different networks are developed based on what people feel are the needs, what's most concerning to them. For instance, in Italy, the concern was professionalization and sustaining of the role. So they were really motivated to get a network going where they can talk about this and really unite in a voice those people who should be able to action stuff. Yeah, so in fact, we just celebrated 1 year of this network last week. Yeah, so as I say, 120 there. So that's really, we're happy with that success. We have a Nordic group network, and this is because across the different Nordic countries, they already had groups that were addressing data, functioning as a de facto data stewardship network in some way or other, and they didn't want to duplicate these efforts in their country. But they thought they shared enough experiences where we could build a regional network, and so now we have all 5 Nordic countries involved in that network. And yeah, as I said, they're looking to sort of work and address commonalities across their borders and also support each country to achieving their goals. Like, for instance, in Denmark, the network is being used to support Denmark with the professionals working there in their what can you call it? It's a movement to really get a competence center to establish for the support of data stewards. And then they're using support from the other networks involved in this regional network to be able to push that forward. So right now we're also supporting the development of a network in Portugal. And this is this was a bit difficult to begin with, of course, because in different countries are different contexts, and we always have to consider how we work with those countries. So we had a few people coming together from University Minho, ISTA Lisbon, and Coimbra, and we luckily had one person from FCT-FCCN, which is the Portuguese National Infrastructure, and also the Portuguese Research Council. And now we are at a point where we will be able to have funding for a year from a new competence center being set up. And we will, in Portugal, there's a tendering process happening right now. So we'll find out who that consortium will be, and they will support the setting up of the network for another year. We're also been working with Hungary to support their network a little bit more loosely. I mean, it came out of discussions and meetings with Skills for EOSC, but they already had some, they were already putting in some effort. And with the University of, it's ELTE, I'm not clear what the whole name is. And there was already a Hungarian research network. So we are working with them, and what we're doing is we're bringing knowledge from the other networks. We are bringing people who would work with the Data Steward Network starter kit, and just exchanging the knowledge across and moving things so we just grow each network with the help of the others involved. Yeah, so the next page, is there another page for me? Yeah, so that brings us to TG7 in the RDA PDSIG. So one of our tasks and skills for EOSC, as I mentioned, was to harmonize the networks that we've helped to create, and also with existing networks, so that they can exchange more of a lightweight network where they can where we can talk about commonalities, have a cross-pollination of ideas, and help to support new initiatives, you know, with those networks that already exist for some time, and have the knowledge to share. Yeah. So these are the main points in our terms of reference, which we've just finished clarifying. So to create a network for data stewardship professionals working in RDM, can support one another, address commonalities, and explore areas for collaboration, support the conception of new national networks, and DS and RDM networks. I said we have here DS and RDM networks because, as we heard already this morning, the data stewardship and data stewards is not really a term that everyone uses, and sometimes it's part of a role rather than a profile. So we try to keep that flexible. And we want to encourage contact and cross-pollination between these networks, and also disseminate new information, new tools, new developments, whatever is presented by our members, and also to work with similar working groups and interest groups. And also, so we function, of course, as a task group of the PDSIG. So our work is it's really having creating events and activities where people can, well, not events, maybe projects more like, so they can be working together, collaboration, and then we disseminate these up to the wider group of the PDSIG. So just a little bit of how this came together. I think I left that out. Maybe I should talk a little bit about that. So my main partner in crime is Aoife in this. And we met at a BoF in Gothenburg in 2023, where Aoife is Aoife who kind of started this off, and she invited people to come and join in. And Lee was one of those people, and myself, and also someone from the Giulia Caldoni from the Italian network, and also I believe Teresa from Graz. Yes, she was also there. And so Julia, myself, and Aoife kind of stuck at it for a while, and then we worked on this and approached the co-chairs of the PDSIG to see if we can have a space there to get this going. So anyway, that's about that. And we formally launched the task group and the plenary online in May of this year. And the next steps we need to do is create a playbook and build and expand the community. We do need to expand our steering group a bit as well, because we want representation from all the countries that we were working with. It's quite small at the moment, but we hope to involve more people. At the moment, we have representation from the Netherlands, Sweden, a lot of the Nordic countries, not Portugal as yet, Italy. We have from the US and from Canada, and also from the UK, and we will soon have a couple from Poland and the other networks we're working with. And the hope is that we can work together with this, whatever initiative comes out of this, to make it into something a bit bigger and more sustaining. I think that's my slides. Oh no, there's more. Yeah, so yeah, I kind of went into that one straight away, didn't I? Yeah. Yeah, so this is just a little bit about the PDSIG. So the membership and what they focus on, and just in case people didn't have an idea of what they do. So this is just kind of a background thing, and a sort of context of where we fit in within the task groups in the PDSIG. And yeah, and I kind of already pushed into this, who we have running the group or getting it up and running, with the hope of getting a lot more people involved. Yeah, as a greater collaboration. If there's anyone in the room or online from the Latin American and Caribbean region, we would really like for you to be part of this, to collaborate with us on this. And I will say, as someone originally from this region, I have a real vested interest in really collaborating and finding out how we can work together. So please do reach out to us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there are already questions or reactions in the chat, but the main topics we wanted to tackle in the discussion was whether these networks should be addressed in a separate group or in TG7, and if in TG7, which personally, because I have the mic in hand, seems the more reasonable choice, how do we make a task group as visible as a group for RDA newcomers?
Hi, I just want to mention that, yeah, there's, actually 2 people from Latin America here, Pedro from Brazil, and yeah, so, yeah, happy to chat afterwards, see, yeah.
Just go back here because it makes more sense. So this is a question that arose even before this BoF was proposed. The question of for how long can we work within the constraints of a task group. I think because there are lots of constraints with that, and the bigger the network gets, and the more ideas people come up with of how they want to go forward and how they want to collaborate, we probably need something bigger for that. This is not to say that Task Group 7 will discontinue. It still has a function within the PDSIG, but I think it's an open discussion as to how long we can work within there. I don't know, Lisa, what do you think as you're here as a co-chair?
Yeah, I mean, Curtis and Aoife have had this discussion before. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Professional Zinc Data Stewardship Interest Group. And if I remember correctly what we said at the time, and what I would say again, is that it's an interest group. So there's lots of flexibility for the task groups to do their work, to also identify for themselves what it is that they want to do within the broader remit of the interest group, which, if you go and read the case statement, is really quite broad. And if there is, concrete, defined projects that come out from the task group, then as within RDA, then the natural thing is to spin a working group that would address that specific project. But I think, as a co-chair of the professional stewardship, I think we would really like to see you there. I think it's those networks, they really contribute to the interest group. And just listening to the presentations, you're all going to get emails from me on, something that's going on in 2 other task groups. So it also creates this, community around data stewardship where we can all learn from each other and support then each other's specific projects. I see that Micah also has a comment, I think. She's another co-chair of the Professionalizing Data Stewardship Interest Group. So,
yeah, I can speak up. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So I was just wondering, because this is like a really recent national development within the Netherlands. So we have actually community managers getting together in the community of community managers. I was just wondering, because reflecting a little bit on this, because what we could do within the Professionalizing Data Steward Interest Group, of course, we could cater for new working groups to be established. But I was just wondering, is this really a working group, or are we here establishing a community of community managers? And that to me would be really interesting, whatever place, regardless of where it kind of sits. I fully agree with Lisa that I really would like to keep you in the Professionalizing Data Steward Interest Group as well, because it is about data stewards. But then if we're adding this effort, you could reflect on that a little bit extra. Is it indeed data stewards who run that, or is it community managers who run communities of data stewards? What is kind of the end goal of, well, what do people want to get out of such a network? So I think that's maybe, I don't know, Curtis, did you come across this within the skills for EOSC as well, this kind of perspective as well, a community of community managers? Just wondering.
And then also, I'll just add that then community of practice obviously is another option, which, if I'm not mistaken, by RDA rules also has to be linked to an interest group, I think.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Micah. Yeah, so the idea with this this group was a community of networks, or so a community with representatives from different networks. Not necessarily a community of community managers, but I mean, by default, I think that's probably what would happen. Those people would be the representatives of their communities. So then they would end up being a part of the TG7. That's what we really want. We had this discussion about whether it's a network or community of practice, or how to move forward with that. And I think that's still being worked out. But the idea is, of course, to support each other. And so whether it's so the definition of a network maybe is for something that's more looking for different ways of opportunities or that kind of thing, but we also want to support each other. So it's not just a network. We would really love for this initiative, have I answered your question, Micah? Okay. Yeah, so we would really love for, thank you, for this, something coming out of this BoF, if you would join with us, and then we can take it from there. Yeah, because I think I think we can produce some outputs that are really useful, and maybe we can have a working group for that. But I think staying within the PDSIG gives us more strength and more focus and more connection with the larger community.
Yes, I suppose the link is important between network and professionalizing the people in the network. Because we have network, but like I said, the most of part are just a mission, little mission, maybe 10% of their time. And it's not a job for us, but I suppose it's really important to consider this mission with yes, with a vision larger than a mission. I don't know if it's clear, but yeah. And the group professionalizing, it's important because it's not really about the network, but it's about the competence in the network. So it's important to align, for me, the competencies in different network, but it's not problem if we have different scale, different level, but the competencies, it's really important to have an alignment, I suppose.
I agree, thank you. I think I agree that we have to take into account all the various levels. And in the same way, the RDA format isn't that important as long as we make sure that everyone can see it and join it and benefit from a larger thing that maybe a separate interest group that wouldn't benefit the PDS already existing basis. But maybe the best way to see the next step as a RDA the working would be to come back, not to redo the work of TG7, which already asked those questions, or what are the outputs that are the most expected, and are there things that still need discussion within a light interest group or task format, or are there already very specific deliverables that everyone would want, like an enlargement of the skills for RIOSC recommendations, or things like that, that would be helped on better supported with a working group format, and to choose the group according to what we have as output. So maybe we could leverage to have the room on the chat to ask what would be the thing they need more, on maybe a word from you who already asked this question at the last session.
Thank you. So I would really like to invite comments from these two colleagues here of what they would expect and to get out of this, and what and then how they feel they could contribute. But just before doing that, I would just like to address what you're asking. So we're at the point where we just finished our terms of reference, and in there we have some of the things, some of the ways we hope for the group to work, and how and some of the things we expect. Some of the activities will produce outputs, and the action of producing those outputs will be a collaborative networking effect, network activity in itself. But what we need is to expand the group and get representation from more places, so we can have these discussions properly, without just a core group of who we are. You know, we don't want to dictate to people what they need. That's not at all ever. It's not going to work, and it's not what we want to do. So we would invite participation in the group. So we can round out those things. If I've answered your question, may I ask, or you can input from, or maybe you.
I'm from Argentina. I live in Germany. I work at data sites. I'm a newbie in this field of RDA, this kind of group. But in data side, we have strong connections with some organizations in Latin America that are working in research data management. So yeah, I'd be happy to make that bridge to see if any of those organizations would be willing to establish this kind of hub with you, because there's already a lot of work being done, and they have the expertise, but they are not here in this room or in this event. So happy to serve as a bridge.
Hi, my name is Pedro Correa. I am from University of São Paulo. I am a professor there, and I work in engineering, computer engineering area. And we are involved with some data management efforts related with collect, organize data from Amazon there. So I completely agree with the discussion here that we must have data stewardship and connection between them. But it's interesting to have people that work with people involved with this, that people that understand what they are doing. Like I can't remember her name. She told about she told about it's important. It's not how to say, it's a mission, more than mission. Yeah, I agree with you. It's very important to consider this. People must be involved and must understand what they are doing, and they have some approach of the business, approach of the technical side, and understand both sides. This is very important. Yeah, thank you. I am available to work with you guys.
We also had a reaction in the chat asking if networks such as Elixir, which is starting some resources on the networks on the data stewardship handbook. Yeah, data stewardship handbook, and if that might be relevant. And I think totally is relevant with data stewardship professionalizing and thematic and existing structures as Elixir absolutely are very important part of the landscape of networks too, and would be very welcome in.
And are already involved. In a sense, I think we do have people from Elixir, and we always welcome more collaboration. Coming back, I think for me, maybe a next step would also be to really define, what is the objective, what is the most useful next step for these networks, and then once we or you understand that, then it's much easier to think, okay, how to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really important next step. One of the things I noticed in the presentations is that there are pretty significant differences in the networks that were presented today, not just that they sort of operate at different geographical levels, but they sort of have, different approaches, different missions, mandates. So I think it's going to be really important at the outset to define exactly what it is we want to achieve by convening this group and getting an agreement on, a set of outputs or objectives that are going to benefit these disparate groups. I mean, the commonality, of course, is data stewardship. So I think there's a lot there, but a good idea to do a lot of, I think, clarifying work at the outset.
Yeah, I think if you have anything to add, please feel free. Yeah, she's.
There is another question. My question was even more practical. Is someone building such an handbook already? Curtis, Ifa, others, we are building it. Don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't know for Curtis, Ifa, but with the example I presented, the little guideline from work package 4 in Research Data Gov. It's like handbook, but we have not really an handbook. We in France, I don't know for others.
So this is a data stewardship handbook. Is that what it is? Yeah. Well, it's definitely something that we could use. we would welcome that. I mean, we are about building the network and bringing people together, but of course, we don't want to. Yeah. Mike. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I can speak up. So I'm also chairing the RDM community within Elixir, and one of our tasks is actually within a small funded program to build such a handbook. And it's actually meant for data stewards who are running their networks, their services, establish their policy, run their services, etc., to kind of do that not on their own, to link and learn from each other. And instead of talking one-on-one or talking to, every time lots of people again one-on-one, we said it would be good to write it down. So I actually had organized a hackathon for that already. We have a bigger hackathon in December, and I just want to, because it kind of links. I think, Curtis, did you mention a playbook? Did you mention a playbook, or did someone else mention?
Yeah,
and
I mentioned the playbook.
Just yeah, I think everyone could use such a handbook or playbook, whatever it is, that help others to build things we're all building, probably individually. So I just don't want to reinvent the wheel. If we're doing efforts already and write down these good practices, because I think most of the presentations today are good practices as well. So these could be things that could be translated in whatever it is, playbook, handbook, guideline, GitHub repository, to kind of start sharing instead of, only small groups. So just happy to work along if you feel that is a good direction, all of you.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to creating a playbook or a handbook is no easy task. So we don't want to do that again if it already exists in some, and then we can implement it in our network. So definitely we don't want to be recreating that, but we will want to work with those who are we will want to work with that.
Yeah, we're only building it. It's far from ready, but at least we'll have a minimal viable product somewhere over next year. So I think good moment to start collaborating there.
Oh, great. And I'm sure there are others. I mean, we can have a review, or we can suggest things if you're open to that. I mean, so we can also contribute in some way.
Yeah, great.
I see some other comments in the chat, and I'm not the moderator, but as co-lead of this group, I just wanted to ask if anybody else had any input. But of course, it's not my session, but it's important for me to know if people have input.
So no reaction in the room. Please feel free if you have one later, or in the chat, please feel free to open your microphone to join the discussion. Maybe as we mentioned that having more people in the task group is the way to go. Do you already have the next, apart from the 2025 event, already meeting scheduled, or anything that we could say to everyone that can join then?
So we have steering group meetings once a month, where we try to work out our purpose and how we communicate what represent ourselves and why we exist, and that's the stage where we're at. But I feel even now with our terms of reference, if more people come in, which we hope, then that will even be adjusted a bit. So we aim to have monthly meetings online, and we need more people in the steering group because you need people in different roles. We hope to have at least 2 people in each role. So, if someone can't make it, then someone else is there. And we would like a globally wide participation as possible. So I don't know if the slides will be available to everyone, but please do email me to just drop in one of our meetings and hear what's going on and yeah and join us. So monthly meetings we have at 4 p.m. UTC. We usually have it because to try and facilitate people in earlier time zones. But maybe after a while, we already talked, after a while, we may have to split the meetings, but we're not at that stage yet.
Thank you. And also for people who couldn't attend or didn't see, there was a session of the globally professionalizing data stewardship interest group this morning that might address other issues, notably the terminologies for the mission statement.
And tomorrow we have a BoF session on career paths, which is something I saw on almost all of your slides. So to come by. And I think, I think it's obvious that you probably want to talk to the task group 7 about, but I mean, there will also be a plenary in April, right? So we can also have a conversation of, how this could go towards professionalizing data stewardship interest group session at that plenary. So I think it's just important to, interact and understand what you want to do and how can we do it together.
So what we had hoped as well is to be able to, because this is a discussion that can take place asynchronously, but then we would like to have at least one big meeting per year, because this is a big topic. It's quite complex. But as a TG, of course, we cannot propose a meeting. So can we? Well, then it will have to be your meet. It will have to be yours, the PDSIG session, or could it be another session?
I mean, you have a co-chair, right, from your group. So we just need to talk about it. So, I mean, we have co-chairs meetings once a month. So Michaela just needs to talk about it with us. And you need to talk about it with her. But there's also possible to have, virtual meetings of the whole interest group, which is also something, we have done in the past and so on. So I think it's just a question of communication at this point, more than anything else.
Okay. Are there more reactions or questions? If no, I think even though we started a bit later, that we can wrap up. Thanks everyone for the presentation of the network. And thanks everyone for all the reactions on the other initiatives we couldn't present, but are still very